you need reliable and accurate data in order to make better policy.
There's immense power in the data.
In it lies valuable insights into the decisions that government makes.
Let's use the data. The data is not there just to be kept.
The data lab is a game changer.
This is a story about how tax data is being used to improve government policy and how developing countries are sharing this innovation with each other.
My name is Duncan Peterser. I'm the Director General of the National Treasury. Tax administrative data is the data that governments ordinarily collect. And so from that perspective, it is data that is almost freely available to governments. The question then becomes, how can governments use the data that they collect anyway in order to inform policy making?
Before 2015, only a handful of countries made available tax administrative data for research. South Africa became the first country from the global south opening up a data lab.
In 2015, I was doing my PhD on the labor market in South Africa, and the data available to me is just not up to the task. At the time, UNU-WIDER were at the beginning of the relationship with the National Treasury to make data from the South Africa Revenue Authority available for research. I applied to UNU-WIDER for access to the data, and I flew across the country to visit the 2 computers that were available on the 20th floor of the National Treasury. What I saw in the tax data was the potential to answer questions on tax policy, jobs, inequality, answering long-standing questions in South Africa that have gone unanswered.
This unique collaboration between the South African Revenue Service that collects the taxes and holds the data and the National Treasury made new research and insights possible.
I'm Michelle Pleece. I am a research associate. My role at the Data Lab entails providing researchers with access to de-identified tax administrative data. Tax administrative data is valuable because it encapsulates the entire formal economy, and this basically means that we can have an entire population to base research questions off of, and also to understand how policy initiatives are affecting these individuals within the formal economy, and we can make appropriate adjustments and changes to these policies and strategies for the greater part of the South African nation.
The Data Lab in South Africa has now been running for more than a decade and now has a dedicated research team, servers, and its own facility. Following the success in South Africa, it begged the question, could this be possible in other countries?
My name is Tina Kaidu. I'm the Acting Assistant Commissioner, Strategy and Research at the Uganda Revenue Authority. With the UNU-WIDER, our collaboration started 2018. In 2019, we had an opportunity to visit the South African facility. We saw the good practices there, and we realized that if we start a similar facility within the Uganda Revenue Authority, we would be able to get to the level that they have reached.
We've been collaborating with UNU-WIDER, and in our collaboration, we visited other countries which work hand in hand with UNU-WIDER. We visited South Africa, where we saw the lab.
In 2019, we saw that they had set up a very excellent data lab. And then we also saw what was happening in Uganda, and that motivated us to say, how can we set up ours?
For many developing countries, the tax revenue governments collect as a percentage of economic output is less than in developed countries. If governments can collect more tax revenue, this can invest more in public infrastructure, starting a virtuous cycle that in turn supports more economic growth and more tax revenue in the future. Here, the Data Lab can provide insights.
In 2021, the Zambia Revenue Authority was contributing about 49% to the budget. This year, 2025, we expected to collect 71.7%. So naturally, in terms of our area of focus, even for research, we're looking at areas that will help us as Zambia Revenue Authority seal the revenue leakages, to improve administrative efficiencies, and ultimately expand the tax base. And in all these aspects, the issue of research and data becomes very critical.
While there was no question that the data could be valuable for research and analysis of policy, there was a question about whether it would be safe to share data with researchers. Here, international best practice on safe, anonymous data was used.
The framework that we are operating on for the international best practice is called the 5 safes, which is safe people, those that have signed NDA can access the data lab, safe project, those that have been approved, safe settings where we've got camera surveillance watching all of our researchers, safe output, those outputs that have been checked by the data team, and safe data, all data that has been de-identified.
You have a responsibility of ensuring that people's data you collect is secure and safeguarded within your organization. We extract the data from the normal transaction systems of URA, then strip it, remove all information that can identify a person.
Throughout the process, UNU-WIDER has been clear with its partners that its role is to support and collaborate, not to lead or own the project.
What one actually wants with these kinds of partnerships is that you want the ownership to reside with the relevant local authority so that that empowers them to use the insights that they gain, whether it's insights being produced by academics or by the policymakers themselves. And I think UNU-WIDER has been very good at allowing the Treasury to lead in this endeavor, along with its other partners, but making sure that they provide the kind of support that we need with this kind of complex endeavor along the way.
UNU-WIDER has been a great partner in this, and I must say that it could have been impossible to get the lab set up without their collaboration. They had the expertise, they had seen the lab work elsewhere, and they helped us a great deal.
The data labs are already making possible research and evidence that can inform policy that ultimately affect the lives of real people. In South Africa, this includes work on tax relief for healthcare, taxes on company profits, the impact of government spending, and of increasing tax revenue.
The use of the tax administration data has become a very important element in taxpayer analysis and research. The research that has been done helps in improving compliance and revenue collections.
One tax policy aimed at boosting employment of young workers, the employment tax incentive, has received a lot of attention from researchers.
The Employment Tax Incentive Program has been one of the most evaluated programs in government, precisely because we have the data available to do so.
In Uganda, research includes work on tax compliance and audits.
We evaluated the impact of a most recent policy reform, and were able to come up with different rates that were more favorable to the ordinary Ugandan citizen.
In Zambia, research has supported ways to improve tax revenue, which in turn directly supports the government's ability to serve the public.
Since the lab will be opened up to other external stakeholders, we'll have other parties able to do research on tax matters and be able to make informed recommendations, not just for the benefit of the government, but also for the general public, starting with provision of free education. There's now free education, which has resulted into about 2.3 million children who were previously not in school going back to school. Most of this funded from the budget and the revenue collected.
All the while, the research work is building capacity.
My favorite part of this program is all about the capacity development, where we see the research assistants come back a couple of years later, running their own research project, finding their own interesting results, and ultimately changing policy.
As more research and analysis using data is shared globally with more policy impact, other countries are noticing.
10 years later, I work for UNU-WIDER, making tax data available for research in other countries. In 2024, the Honduras Revenue Authority reached out to understand what are the building blocks required for their own data lab.
Experiencias de Sudáfrica, Uganda y Zambia sirven como referencia para la Administración Tributaria de Honduras porque nos permiten entender de que es posible crear espacios institucionales seguros y colaborativos donde los datos se utilicen de forma ética y efectiva para impulsar reformas tributarias que permitan corregir desigualdades históricas de nuestras sociedades.
The Data Lab story shows that making tax administrative data available for research is possible to do safely, securely, and in a way that improves the lives of citizens.
Lessons from developing a data lab, it came to be out of a need. And then we had a partnership who had seen it somewhere. Then we ended up benchmarking in South Africa where they had seen it, and the rest was history.
Starting small is underrated. If you have one dataset, one computer, and one researcher, potentially you have a data lab.
It is possible. You can start small and you will get there.
It's amazing to see how the little steps have resulted into a giant step. In fact, I wish it started 10 or 15 years earlier. They better start now.
UNU-WIDER would like to acknowledge the hard work of staff, collaborators, and partners who make the data labs possible.